Just getting ready to go live on Facebook. We're here for our weekly Q&A. It is Friday, May the 8th. Let me get this music shut off. Let's get this rolling. All right, we're live on Facebook. We are live on Instagram, and thank you for being here today. We're taking your questions. It's a live Q&A after all. And I'm excited to kick things off. I probably need to turn on the sound so that you can hear me talking. All right, so welcome. Friday, May 8th. It is Q&A time. There were a couple questions that came in already. I'm going to pull up some of these. This is a good question here that we'll kick things off with. And this is from Jack's Jazz. So hopefully Jack can check this out. But Jack says, what is the importance of the school you go to versus your own hard work? That is a great question. I think that really it's always, you can't hear. Maybe it's because it's in that weird place. Can you hear me now, cats? Let me know if that's better. And I'll move this over here. Hopefully that's better. I think it was muffled before. But just a lot of technical difficulties this morning. So thanks for bearing with me. This is a good question, though. What's happening, Yusuf? Thanks for being here. We're answering this question that's down here. And then we're going to answer Jonah Portinari's question. He left a question in my DMs. I do take questions during the week, so feel free to do that. But okay, what's the importance of the school you go to versus your own hard work? Now, I think that it's really up to your hard work. It doesn't really matter what where you are at school if you don't work hard, and it doesn't really matter if you don't go to the biggest name school if you do work hard. A school, on the other hand, just to play devil's advocate in both sides, the school is going to establish you in a certain community. The school is going to hook you up with people that are, of a certain similar mindset, perhaps, have a similar education, know similar tunes and stuff like that, and just kind of create a scene. So I know that, there's a scene of people and alumni that I've interacted with from going to Eastman, and there's also a scene of people that I've interacted with and worked with that are people that I went to Juilliard with, and they're kind of different crowds and have different focuses. And that doesn't mean one is not necessarily better than the other, but they're just definitely different. So, you can't escape the hard work, Jack. You really can't. It's the most important thing you can do during school is shed and practice and get experience playing all different types of gigs, playing all different types of situations, trying to figure out where you fit in into the musical world, where you want to fit in, and getting the skills together that are going to help you to be able to do that. So it doesn't really matter. I would say it matters more where you go to school in terms of location, in terms of where you want to end up, especially at the master's level. But then again, in this virtual world, I'm not sure that it matters. Ultimately, it needs to be going to get the best education you can in a place that's going to afford you to develop the most. You never know where that might be. You never know what opportunities a certain place could present. And so I just wouldn't be afraid to keep your mind open to any possibilities. You want to make sure that you have a teacher that's going to be able to get you to where you want to go. Does the teacher have experience doing what you want to be doing? If you want to be a teacher and you are a person that is going for a master's degree, you might want to consider going to a place where you get to do some TA or TF work. For example, at UNT, our master's students get a lot of teaching opportunities. Where I went at Juilliard for my master's, there's no TA teaching at Juilliard. It's all faculty, which is great for as a student to get taught by some of New York's great, jazz musicians. But in terms of learning to teach, it would have been nice also potentially to be able to do some teaching, which I did on my own because I sought it out intentionally. But if you're just wanting to get that experience, you might think about it. So ultimately, it does matter where you go to school in terms of those type of things, but you're going to have to work hard either way. And if you're in a place that's too distracting too soon in your career, you're never going to get enough time in the practice room. At least that's my experience. You got to have that time in the practice room in order to really make anything happen as a jazz musician or musician. So Jax, I hope that answers your question. Let me know. I'm wondering where you're thinking about going to school. If you end up watching this, let us know kind of where you're thinking about going to school. All right, so some other live questions here. Let's move to Tate. But don't worry, Jonah, I will eventually get to your question. What's up, Javier? What kind of trombone should I get as a lead trombonist? I don't know, Javier is the perfect person to answer this question. No, I'm teasing. I don't know. What kind of lead trombone should I get? Well, you should get a trombone that allows you to play in that register with confidence and gets the sound that you're looking for. I think there's two different schools of thought see, Javier plays a large bore and he wants to play lead, and that's great. So you can play it on any, what I'm trying to say, basically you can play lead on anything. You just have to have the sound concept and adjust accordingly. I don't think there's one horn that is like a magic lead trombone. Some people think a smaller one is good, but I don't necessarily agree. It's kind of, sometimes you get too small of a sound. So I think that you have to have the right sound concept. So meaning you have to listen to a lot of big band playing and listen to some lead players, how they play and what intensity. I mean, a King 2B or 3B is kind of like the standard, I guess, like general standard where things are kind of based off of. Yeah, Tate has a 3B. Oh, there you go. So 3B is a good place to start. But you can play lead on anything. Yeah, this says the Great Bone says I play lead on a 6H is just fine. Yeah, I play lead on a 3B plus and it's just fine. It all has to do with your sound concept and execution more than it does the horn itself. So I mean, you could say that you could buy a certain horn that's going to make it easier to play in a certain register, perhaps, but ultimately it's going to come down to you making sure that you're matching your sound concept with what needs to be coming out the other end and what needs to be happening for the musical situation. So that's the answer. You can play lead on anything, but if you want to go to the quote unquote regular one, you maybe do a 3B or a 2B even. Those are like 508 and 500 bore respectively. 3B plus. What's up, Chuck? How are you? That's what I play. It's right here. 3B plus, 525. There's lots of things. The Michael Davis Shires models are nice too. Rath has some good ones. Obviously 6H is cool. I don't know. You can play it on anything, really. I played Edwards for a while, but 3B plus is the tool of choice for me. So I'm more of a person that goes for sound concept over tools, like ease of playing. Some people tend to go to ease of playing over the sound concept, and that's just not what I do. All right, good question. So feel free to drop some in the chat if you're watching live, or in the comments if you're watching this later. Another question here from Purna Kumar, trombone. Is it harder to get into the jazz scene if you're a classical performance major? Potentially. I don't think that you can't get into the jazz scene if you're a classical major, if you're focusing on getting good at playing jazz. It's just as easy for anybody as long as you're showing up. Basically, you're showing up, you're shedding, you're sounding good, then it doesn't really matter whether you're a jazz major or a classical major. Christian McBride, classical major at Juilliard. Miles Davis, classical major at Juilliard. Chick Corea, classical major at Juilliard. So I wouldn't. I don't think you need to worry about that. I mean, you're going to get good at. You have to get really good at your instrument. So being a classical major might even put you at an advantage as compared to some jazz majors who aren't dealing with the horn and who aren't actually getting technically better, able to execute more things on their instrument, because that's what I think that you're supposed to do with classical study in a jazz context. Is it's freeing you up to play the things that you hear in your head. It's freeing you up to be able to play the things you're trying to improvise. You have to be able to play them first, or else you're not going to be able to improvise you're not going to be able to improvise what you're hearing or imagining if you have no technique. So getting into the scene is just showing up. You just have to show up. It doesn't matter what major you are. If you love the music, it doesn't matter. That's the short answer. If you love the music, it does not matter. I saw a question coming in the chat, so I want to get to that one from Count J. Cuevas. And I think he said he's from the Philippines. So what's up, Philippines? Thanks for being here. He says, what about a King 3BF? That's the one with the trigger. 2 of my students play those, and they sound great. They play lead on a King 3BF. Is yours silver? They both had ones that are silver. And a good friend of mine in New Orleans, Charlie Halloran, he also he played for a while, and he plays like in the trad jazz style, like early 1900s style, super killing at it. And he plays that 3BF as well. So it's a good one. All right, we're going to take, let's see. Josh Jennings has a question. I'll pull that up. I'll get to your question in just a second, Josh. I'm going to answer one from Facebook that came in quick from Denon Koch. Sorry, man. I wish I knew how to speak your last name. But he says, hey, Nick, I'd love to hear about your approach to improvising over vamps. You do a lot of that on cast of characters, and you really get somewhere each time. Okay, so improvising over vamps, that's a good question. You have to be basically totally free and in control of the changing and the harmony. And then you have to practice, playing over the changes in different interesting ways. Sorry, Denon, my bad. You have to be totally rhythmically free and obviously melodically free. And then you just have to start playing and experimenting. So I make like a GarageBand loop or a Logic loop, and I just play over it for as much different ways as I can, as many different approaches as I can, trying to play different shapes over it, different sounds, just to try to see like what is happening, what can I get away with, what can't I get away with in terms of tension and release of the harmony. And then ultimately you have to just let your brain take over, or your ear rather. I think it's your brain, but anyway, just let your ear take over and follow it. So ultimately I want to play with the other musicians. Just because it's a vamp, like I don't want them to just play the vamp. I always tell them that. Don't just play the vamp. That's just a jumping off point, and you have to play with each other. So just playing over the vamp and figuring out quote unquote hip things to do is, the starting point, but then it's ultimately about playing with the other people and making something happen in real time. So you got to do that. You got to play with the other people. And on cast of characters, there's a couple different vamps. And on some of the tunes, like Patience rather, there's like, the whole band is playing. And so you really have to listen, and you have to, really develop a sense of ensemble improvisation, which goes all the way back to the beginning of jazz. And sometimes it doesn't get translated into quote unquote a modern context, but that tradition of being able to improvise with other people at the same time is an important one, and one that I think is relevant whether you're playing quote unquote modern jazz or quote old stuff, traditional stuff. So I guess that's my approach to vamps is 1, thinking really, really melodically and musically. 2, testing out all my possible things that I might want to play in practice. And then 3, forgetting about all that and just playing with the other people. I'm putting the music first. I've said this other times on this stream, but I'll say it again because I think it's really, 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 really important. And that's asking yourself the question, what does the music need right now? What does the music need right now? Not what do I want to play? What does the music need? So trying to put the music first. Hopefully that gives you some kind of answer, Denon. Awesome. Chris from Brazil says he's got the Get Ahead book and he's practicing. Awesome. Glad to hear that. Glad you're enjoying the book. Get Ahead was my first book. It came out 2013. It's kind of a jazz trombone overview. Not really a method book, but kind of an approach to a lot of different types of playing jazz trombone. Just going through the comments on Instagram quick to see if I missed any questions before I get to this one. There's a really good question here from Josh Jennings Jazz. Yes, Denon, you are welcome. So Josh asks, how does applied music lessons as a jazz studies major work at UNT? So on the brass side, in particular trumpet and trombone, you have to take classical lessons for the first 2 years. don't get all worried about it. This is the same as it was where I went to school at Eastman. It's exactly the same. And the reason for taking 2 years of classical study is because you want to get good and proficient at your instrument. You need to be able to play your instrument in order to improvise at a high level. Therefore, there's a UDE, they call it upper division exam, and you have to pass that to be able to go into your jazz lessons, which basically just proves that you've put in the time on the horn. So you put in the time on the horn first. But that's not to say that you're not playing jazz that whole time. So you take 2 years, quote unquote, with a classical teacher and 2 years with a jazz teacher, quote unquote. It's all the same. It's all just playing a brass instrument. Sometimes people get caught up in this. That's why I kind of am approaching the answer in this way. But you're playing jazz the whole time because you're taking in your first year a jazz performance fundamentals class, and that's a class. I teach it for the trombone area, which is all the first year students get together and we talk about playing jazz trombone every week, twice a week actually. And we cover a whole bunch of topics from improvisation to sound concept to playing in big band with different composers and talking about how it might be different to play with a Gil Evans chart than a Thad Jones chart to a Duke Ellington chart and how those things are different. I'm glad Josh agrees. He also says, yay, classical. I'm glad to hear that, it's not that you have to want to play Brahms for your whole life, but to get your horn together is super, super important. As a brass player, especially. So we do that. And then you go into improv class after that first year. So you got that second year, you got improv 1, improv 2. So you're playing jazz, you're playing in big bands, playing in small groups if you audition to get into one. And then, and that's that. That's what how applied lessons work in playing jazz at UNT. And I know it's the same at Eastman. I don't think there was necessarily a classical component at Juilliard for the undergrads. I saw Andy Clausen was on the stream. Maybe he can vouch for whether that's true or false. I think he took jazz lessons for most of that time, but he might have hopped off the stream by now. Maybe he can give us some context. But I'm going to move on to the next question in the meantime. From Manny Lumapus. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Manny. He says, what was your time like teaching at FSU? That was a crazy time. It was a good time. That gig came out of nowhere. I wasn't looking for a teaching gig necessarily. I was on the road a lot during that time with a group called Postmodern Jukebox, doing a bunch of touring. That's like a YouTube jazz pop fusion kind of whatever fun time band. And we were going to Europe. We were going to Australia. It was doing a lot of touring during those years. That was 14 to 16. And so what was it like? It was cool. It was my first time teaching at the college level in a position. I was a visiting professor position. I taught improv class, the master's level improv class. I taught trombone lessons and I taught the second big band. And it was a good experience, picking out programs and starting to really dig into what it means to be an effective and clear teacher. I still am working on that all the time. My students can probably attest that I'm trying to get better about being as clear as possible all the time. So I did that for 2 years, and when it was an interim visiting appointment and they wanted to move ahead with in another direction with a person that had a doctorate, and I decided at the same time that I wanted to be back in New York more. I was commuting back and forth between New York and Tallahassee, which was very difficult because there's no direct flights. You have to go through Atlanta all the time, every time. And so I got a lot of Sky Miles, which I'm grateful for. I'm into my Sky Miles, but I ultimately decided I wanted to be back in New York. And so I went back 2016. And then that's when I really started focusing on doing digital content and focused on doing videos and these live streams and all kinds of things like that. So, okay. So Manny played Barry in jazz too. Nice. Yeah. So it was a good time, but it ultimately wasn't going to be long-term for me. It wasn't the right time, I think, for me in that position. And so now they moved in another direction. And then the position at UNT came open in 2018 fall. And I had been there 2018 spring for the lecture series, and kind of one thing led to another. So that's what I just talk about, being open and prepared for opportunities. This is exactly the reason, because you never know when some kind of opportunity might come your way. And then all the gigs might disappear a year later. You never know what's going to happen in life. So I just tell my students to try to be as prepared as possible, and to be as flexible and be able to do as many things as possible. That's why I push the entrepreneurship and teaching, and why I have a record label and a nonprofit, and try to keep my hands in every aspect of the music business, because you never know when you're going to need it, because it could be an important time in the future where you need those skills. So hopefully that answers your question, Manny. It was a different time at FSU. Bill Kennedy was still there, and it was kind of in transition, and the dean, I think, was different. I don't exactly know. I haven't kept totally up with the politics of FSU, but I do have some connection still to that, and I talk to some of the students still sometimes, and some of them are doing super well. TJ Norris was one of my students, and he's in New Orleans now playing with the Rebirth Brass Band. Another student of mine, Tyler Wortman, a trombone player in the Tampa area, he moved back there, went to University of South Florida, and now some of his students are coming to FSU. So that's a super cool thing, and that's happening a lot faster, making me feel like an old man, a lot faster than I thought, but it's super cool to see. So I'm looking forward to getting more of my students coming through, which is pretty awesome. So if you're watching live now, please feel free to drop in some questions on Facebook, or drop in questions over on the live stream. What's up? Here, see, Adesh is here, and Adesh was a former student from Juilliard Jazz Camp and FSU. So Florida in the house today. All right, let's go back to some of these other questions. All right, so we're up to date here, so I'll leave that one there so people see that we're doing a Q&A. We're not doing this question anymore, but so that there were some other questions that came in during the week, and so I wanted to get to those. So Jonah Portnari, I don't know if he's still here, but he is wondering what the Jazz Trombone Bootcamp is going to be like, and so I will tell you what the Jazz Trombone Bootcamp is going to be like. Dallas, excellent. He's an FSU alum. Very small world. Very cool. So Bootcamp. We're going to talk about Bootcamp for a minute. It's June 15th through 19th. It's going to be starting at, what time did I say? Either 10 or 11. I forget. I'll pull up the schedule so that I can tell you exactly what is happening. But basically, every day we're going to have some warm-ups and technical workouts, and then we're going to have some different, not supervised, but helpful practice time, where we'll break off into different groups and kind of practice some stuff. We're going to work on a piece to record together virtually, which is going to be super awesome, I think. We're going to have a daily masterclass from either myself, a TF, a guest artist. There's going to be a masterclass every day where some of the students will play. We're kind of keeping it limited to a number of people so that we can actually hear everyone play during the course of the week. So there's not going to be 50 people and then some people don't get to play. Everyone who signs up will get to play in one of the master classes, so that's very important to me. I'm pulling up the schedule here. I can just go to the website. It's nickfinzermusic.com/bootcamp. That'll get you right to all of the information about it. It is definitely geared towards more serious students that want to delve deep into jazz trombone stuff. It's going to start at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. in New York, 8 a.m. in LA. I know it's a little early, but I was trying to find some kind of middle ground that would allow people to do it during the day and then going to go and do what they need to do at night. But there are some people that are signed up that are in Europe. They're going to do it at night after work. So you can really do it from anywhere. So don't be afraid to sign up. But yeah, nickfinzermusic.com/bootcamp. It's going to be different topics every day. It's going to be kind of an overview of everything. Not everything, but many, many things that you need to work on as a jazz trombonist, and from technical stuff to theory and improvisation and all of that. So I don't want to make this into an infomercial, but I am super excited about it. And spots are being sold as faster than I thought they would be. And we're only going to take a maximum of 15 people. So if you do want to do it, you want to jump on and get that taken care of as soon as you can. nickfinzermusic.com/bootcamp. That's where you can find that. June 15 through 19. You need a laptop and an internet connection. That's how you need to attend. I recommend some other stuff like headphones, but you can pretty much attend just with a laptop. You could do it just on your phone, but it's not going to be quite as good as if you can get that hooked up. Hooked up meaning the laptop situation. All right, so back to any other questions from today. I think I saw maybe some got dropped in Here's another one from Josh Jennings Jazz. How do you incorporate approach tones, pivots, turns, and triplets into your improvisation? That is a very, very technical and detailed question. I like where you're coming from, Josh. Okay, so how do I incorporate approach tones? Approach tones are really part of the overall language of bebop, I think. And so I think it's important that you practice patterns that take you around the circle and that surround tones and stuff like that. So like I would say, like, go around the circle. Surrounding the third of a chord and then going to the root. Just as this is just like step one, you might already be beyond that step. But to incorporate them, you have to have them into your memory. I remember Barry Harris came to Juilliard and gave a master class about bebop vocabulary, basically. And we went through a whole kind of series of his approach of these little bebop isms, is what I call them. And you have to get them so ingrained into your playing that you don't have to think about them anymore. That's the trick, is that if you have not got them to a point where you're not thinking about them, there's no way that you're going to be able to play them in a live situation that where you can just it's decoration, it's filler, it's not filler, but it's, how do I describe it? I don't know. It's the connective tissue, I guess, that makes bebop sound like bebop. That's what we're talking about. All that stuff. Let's see. Pivots, turns, and triplets. You get that from listening to great players and hearing where they use it. That's how I learned how to use triplets. Open the Omnibook. I have the Omnibook on my stand. All right, I'm going to pull it up here. Open to a random page. All right, look. Instagram. Look. All the different rhythms. I know it's backwards, but look at all those rhythms. Look how everything starts in a different place. I'll show it to Facebook here. Look at how there's different rhythms and they start on different beats, and all of that. That is how you learn how to play bebop, and that's how you learn where to put the triplets. That's how you learn when to use the triplets. And it's about getting it in your ear, like listening to great soloists on your instrument. Josh, you play trumpet, right? Is that right? I can barely see, but I think you play trumpet. So if you're listening to Clifford Brown and you're listening to how he incorporates turns and grace notes, you're gonna figure that out. And triplets, a lot of people don't talk about the difference in triplets. I'm going to get super technical and nerdy right now. So if you need to jump off the stream, then jump off the stream. But we're going to talk about super technical thing about triplets is that there's actually like 3 different placements of a triplet that, generally speaking, in jazz, you can either put it on the beat. If this is our time, da 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 da, right? Da ya da. You can also play it as a 16th note triplet on the first part of the beat. Diddle-da-da-da, 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 diddle-da-da-da. Or you can put it on the and. Diddle-da-da, 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 right? So you got da-ba-da, da-da-da-da, da-ba-da-da, diddle-da-da. Those are the 3. And just kind of getting used to those 3 and how to use them. And then you'll start to notice them in different bebop tunes. Barry Harris talks about this a lot too. So if you go and watch some of his videos on YouTube, super, super informative. And I know you can't go to New York and take his class anymore, but they're really, 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 really good about the bebop language. And to me, the bebop language is the foundation of playing jazz, and it's the foundation from which you can go in all directions. So when I approach teaching, we focus on that stuff because that's the hardest and most specific. And then we go back and learn the history, and we also go forward and learn, quote unquote, modern approaches, which are just different approaches to me in terms of modal stuff and modal mixture and other technical non-musical things. So I think, let's see. I think we've gotten through all the questions so far in the chat. Oh, I see one here. From Lisa, AMBTS, how to play with consistent sound or comfortably in lower and upper register without resetting. I see some things here. Josh, you're very welcome. I'm happy to answer. No worries at all. this is, sorry, I'm thinking about the answer to this question for Lisa, which is why I'm stalling slightly. The short answer, Lisa, is that you need to play exercises that connect the upper and lower register together. If you've ever maybe practiced some lip slurs, like the Marsteller ones, like or something similar. I'm like not warmed up. I just picked that up cold, but something like that where you're going to connect the lower and upper register together is going to be really important. You should aim to not reset at all. However, I think there is some slight change for most people. If you watch most players play, they're going to be shifting a little bit, and I definitely shift a little bit from lower register to upper register, and I think that that's just part of playing a trombone, to be honest. But obviously the goal is to not. So you need to play stuff that's connecting the lower register to the upper register. Use a mirror, look in the mirror and make sure you're not moving, and or moving as little as possible, and just try to slowly but surely make sure that you're not shifting or not moving or not resetting. And it's going to suck, especially if you're used to it, but word of warning here about that is that I had a really, really good friend in high school who was an amazing lead trumpet player who now doesn't play. He's a banker, I think. Not that there's anything wrong with being a banker, but that he was a jazz major at Eastman, and he had two different embouchures. And when he tried to combine them together, it didn't work. He needed to pick one and connect the two together. But instead he tried to blend the two together and it just didn't work. So you need to use what's the comfortable setting, and then the comfortable way for you to play. I mean, because everybody's going to be a little bit different. I don't prescribe to the method that there's one way to play trombone, and trumpet too, but there's not just one way. There's a lot of successful ways as long as you're not hurting yourself. So, those are things to think about. You definitely want to play with good technique, but you don't need to worry too much about it as long as you're not hurting yourself and not doing it wrong, totally wrong. So that's going to limit you, and then you have to relearn, which is super frustrating. So you don't want to have to do that either. All right, a couple more questions jumping in here. Lisa, that was a good question. You probably need a lesson is what the answer is. You need to talk so we can talk one-on-one and actually figure that out for you if it's a big problem. All right, here's a question from Dan Lee. Trombone, is double tonguing in classical music the same as in jazz? I would say no. Double tonguing in jazz is a little more nuanced to the syllables that you would say. I think of a D and a G syllable. All right, and then classical music is a little more T and K. Lisa, sorry, I wish I could answer more in the stream, but it's kind of really a personal thing in terms of how your chops work. That's why I said that. You don't have to have a lesson with me. You can have a lesson with anybody, but to talk about that. But a classical double tongue is a taka 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 ta, and it's super straight, right? Taka taka ta taka taka ta taka 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 ta, and the jazz one has to be more flexible to go up and down, right? High to low, just like Lisa was asking about, being able to play through the range of the instrument without having to reset or shift. All of those things are important. No, it's not the same. You want to use a D and a G in a jazz setting, a little softer, so it has more flow. The classical way is a little more rigid and a little more T and K. So taka taka ta, taka 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 ta. And it wants to be a little bit more separated in the kind of that classical setting. You're trying to match, the style. All right, Count J. Cuevas, I saw your question. Sorry for taking so long to get to it, but it was back a little ways in the chat, but I saw it. All right, here it is. Count J says, I'm a big fan of JJ. Me too. What can you say about Frank Rosolino? I can say that Frank Rosolino is an amazing technician of the trombone. He can do some incredible stuff. He's really well known for his turns. He's an incredible, flexible player with incredible versatility and range. he's not in my top 5, but it doesn't mean he's not a great player. And he's not a great improviser in that he didn't change the technical mastery level for the instrument, because he did, and he raised the bar, and he, I know hindsight can sometimes be 20/20, but if you know what happened to him at the end of his life, you can kind of hear it in his music. And for me, it's hard to separate the two at this point. So I have some challenges listening to his music with just a little bit of the kind of frenetic energy that's in it, and so sometimes it's just a little challenging for me to listen to, but there's so much to learn from transcribing Frank Rosolino and technical mastery, and so I highly recommend at some point in your jazz trombone learning, you've got to spend some time with Frank, and you got to check out what he's about and what he has to offer. So there's some many great recordings. There's a great All the Things You Are solo that people loved to approach, and so I would send you to that. One of my students did a whole record of Frank in the fall, and it was really fruitful for him to dive deep into Frank. So that's what I can say about Frank Rosolino. Dan Lee, you are welcome. Count J wants me to tell my top 5. Okay. JJ, Curtis, Slide. And then it's kind of a toss-up after those 3. JJ Curtis, Slide, and then Steve Davis, Wycliffe Gordon, Steve Turre are the next 3 after that. So I'll just leave it at that. The list could go on and on and on, but that's the short list. I mean, Robin Eubanks, I don't know. I can't really pick favorites, but I would say if I had to pick 5, in terms of what my sound concept would be, it's kind of 6. It definitely is those 6 because Wycliffe is in there. And so is Steve Davis in terms of phrasing, and Steve Turre in terms of articulation, in terms of range of expression. So there's a lot to get from a lot of people. So those are mine. But yep, Lisa also said the same question. Who's in your top 5? So that was it. Those were the top 5. Matt G. Sax, top 5 of your favorite sax. Oh, I'm going to keep getting this now. I'm going to get lots of top 5s. Top 5 this, top 5 that. Okay, top 5 of your favorite saxophone players on the scene. I guess there's the question of whether I play with them or not, or just in general. I'm just going to go with in general. I'm going to go with people that are alive and playing of like all time. So that are super inspiring. Kenny Garrett, Joshua Redman are 2 big ones that from my youth. I play with Lucas Pino all the time, and he's on the scene now, and I really love his music and his playing. And that's 3. Who else? It's hard to pick, I'm going to pick Anat Cohen because she's a reed player, because I work for her, so I'm going to say that. And there's so many people. I don't know if I can pick one. Michael Brecker was always is in my top. I'm just going to say Michael Brecker because I know he's not alive anymore, but he's still inspiring, I think, to this day. So the top 5 saxophone players, there you go. I know they're not on the scene, but if you're talking about like working on the scene, like Lucas is really great. I mean, Stacy Dillard sounds great. I'm thinking of tenor players now. You kind of have to like batch them into tenor players or alto players, because there's so many great musicians, and I don't want to, leave people out. Roxy Koss, still thinking of tenor players apparently. Yeah, I'm stopping. I'm not going to list any more people. I don't want anyone to get mad. Not that they're going to watch this, but if I heard that Nick said, that kind of thing. All right, so one more call for questions. Otherwise, we'll sign off for today, and we'll be back next week on Friday. Next week will be Friday, May 15th. May 15th is my dad's birthday, so I will be back for that. Happy birthday, and we'll wish my dad happy birthday. Maybe we'll sing him happy birthday on the show. But next Friday, May 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, go check out the Jazz Trombone Bootcamp, especially if you're an improvising trombonist and you want to get better at all the things related to that, jazz and otherwise, in the life of improvising musician. And nickfinzermusic.com/bootcamp. That's where you can find that. I'm really excited about it, which is why I'm mentioning it a bunch of times. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So Yeah, Chuck, you're welcome. We're here every single Friday, and on Thursdays we also do a trading session. And the trading session is has been themed by composer or like maybe standards was the theme. But check my Facebook and stuff for the play along list, and we just pull up some play alongs and we trade, play the head, trade courses back and forth, eights, fours. We've had saxophone players and trumpet players and trombone players, guitar players all tuning in, I know, and piano players. So it's just a fun time. So we do that on Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern is the Q&A. So I'm trying to up the streaming game. So one day I'll be able to get this camera that's behind this phone connected to the computer so it can actually be in real time and high quality. But for now, I appreciate you being here. And with all that being said, I'm going to check the questions one more time before I sign off, and we're good. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.